Some people are not loved. They are only remembered when someone needs something. They are not missed for who they are. They are missed for what they can do. And the saddest part is this: many of them do not realize it at first. They think they are being kind. They think they are being useful. They think that if they keep showing up, keep sacrificing, keep saying yes, then one day the world will return that love. But life does not always work that way. Sometimes, the more you give without limits, the less people value what you give. Sometimes the person everyone depends on becomes the one no one truly sees. This is the story of a man named Elias. Elias lived in a small town near the sea, where the mornings smelled of salt and the evenings were painted in orange light. The town was quiet, simple, and full of familiar faces. Everyone knew everyone. Doors were rarely locked. News traveled fast. And in that town, almost everyone knew Elias. He worked at a little repair shop beside the harbor. He fixed lamps, clocks, broken chairs, coffee machines, and sometimes even children's toys. His hands were skilled and patient. He could take apart a broken thing, study it in silence, and somehow bring it back to life. People admired that about him, but what they admired even more was this: Elias never refused anyone. If an old neighbor needed help carrying water, Elias went. If a fisherman wanted someone to patch a torn net late at night, Elias went. If a young couple needed help moving a table, Elias went. If someone needed advice, company, labor time, attention, or energy, Elias was always there. And every time he answered with the same gentle smile. Yes, of course. At first it felt good. He liked being needed. He liked the way people called his name with relief. He liked hearing, "I knew I could count on you." Those words warmed him. They made him feel important. They made him feel that his life mattered. But slowly, without noticing, Elias gave away more than his time. He gave away his mornings. He gave away his rest. He gave away his plans. He gave away his peace. The shelves in his own house stayed crooked because he never had time to fix them. The window in his kitchen remained cracked for months. A small leak in the ceiling grew worse every week. His meals became rushed. His sleep became shallow. The books he wanted to read remained untouched by his bed. There was always something more urgent in someone else's life. And somehow Elias always placed himself at the end of the line. His sister Mara saw it clearly. One evening, she visited him and found him sitting in the dark, too tired to light the lamp he had repaired for others all day. She looked around the room. A chair leaned unevenly against the wall. A drawer was half broken. The ceiling had a pale stain from rainwater. Mara asked softly, "Elias, why do you live like a guest in your own life?" He laughed a little. "I'm just busy." She shook her head. "No, you are not busy. You are available. There is a difference." Elias smiled, but he said nothing, because deep down, her words made him uncomfortable. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. A few days later, the town prepared for the annual harbor festival. It was the biggest event of the season. Lanterns would hang across the streets. Boats would be decorated with ribbons and lights. Music would play late into the evening. Everyone was excited. Elias had quietly made one plan for himself. For the first time in months, he wanted to spend the whole day fixing his own house. He had bought wood for the shelf tools for the leak, and a small pot of blue paint for the kitchen window frame. It was a simple plan, but to him it felt special. That morning he woke early, opened the windows, and let the sea air into the room. He looked at the unfinished things around him and thought, "Today finally I will take care of my own life." But before he could begin, there was a knock at the door. Then another, then another. A neighbor needed help hanging festival lights. A friend needed help lifting crates near the harbor. The owner of the bakery needed someone to repair a loose oven handle before the crowds arrived. Each request sounded reasonable. Each person seemed stressed. Each one said, "It will only take a little while." And Elias, as always, said yes. One little while became another, then another. The sun moved across the sky. By afternoon he had not touched a single thing in his own home. By evening he was exhausted. He returned at last, hoping to at least start on the roof before night. But when he opened the door, a cold wind moved through the room. Clouds had gathered while he was away. Rain began falling hard against the roof. Within minutes, water started dripping through the ceiling, first in one corner, then another. He rushed to place bowls and cloths on the floor, but the leak was worse than before. The crack in the window let rain spray across the wall. The shelf wood he had bought was soaked before he even opened it. Elias stood in the middle of his room, surrounded by water tools and half-ruined plans. Outside, the town glowed with festival lights. Inside, his home felt abandoned. And for the first time, something inside him did not feel tired. It felt hurt. Not because the rain had damaged his house, but because he suddenly saw the truth. He had spent all day helping everyone prepare for joy, while his own life quietly fell apart. The next morning, he walked along the shore before sunrise. The beach was nearly empty. At the far end of the harbor sat an old woman named Celeste. She was known in town for weaving fishing baskets by hand. People said she had once traveled far, seen many places, and returned with more wisdom than stories. Elias often greeted her, but this time he stopped and sat beside her on the rocks. For a while, neither of them spoke. The sea moved in and out with slow patience. Finally, Elias said, "I do not understand what is happening to me. I help people, but I feel emptier every week. I thought kindness would make life fuller. Why does mine feel smaller?" Celeste kept weaving. Then she held up the basket in her hands. It was almost finished. She asked, "What happens if I keep filling this basket after it is full?" Elias looked at it and answered, "Everything will spill." She nodded. "And if I keep forcing more into it, it may tear." Celeste smiled gently. "Yes, even a strong basket has a limit, and so does a human heart." Elias stared at the waves. She continued, "You believe that love is proven by endless giving, but endless giving is not love. It is often fear." He turned to her. "Fear, yes," she said. "Fear of disappointing people. Fear of being seen as selfish. Fear that if you stop being useful, you will stop being valued." Her words landed heavily in his chest because they named something he had never said aloud. Celeste placed the basket on her lap. "You are not weak, because you are kind, Elias. But kindness without boundaries invites quiet destruction. People will take what is always available, not always because they are cruel, but because humans get used to open doors." He lowered his eyes. "So what should I do?" Celeste said. "For 1 week, do not answer immediately when someone asks for your time. Pause. Ask yourself one question. If I give this away, what part of me will pay for it? If the cost is your health, your peace, your needed rest, or the care of your own life, then your answer should be no." Elias was silent. Saying no felt heavier than lifting crates, repairing ovens, or carrying wood. Celeste seemed to understand. She added, "A door is not rude because it has a lock. It still opens. But not for everyone, and not at every hour." That sentence followed him home. A door is not rude because it has a lock. That afternoon, the test came sooner than he expected. A man from 2 streets away appeared and said, "Elias, can you come repair my fence now? Guests are arriving tonight." Elias looked at the ceiling stain above his own table. He looked at the damp wall. He looked at the tools still waiting where he had left them. His mouth almost said yes. It had said yes 1,000 times before. But then he heard Celeste's voice in his mind. "If I give this away, what part of me will pay for it? He took a slow breath. Then he said, I cannot come now. I need to repair my own home today. If you still need help tomorrow afternoon, I can see what time I have. The man blinked. He looked surprised, almost offended. Oh, he said, I thought you were free. Elias nearly apologized, nearly changed his answer, but instead he said quietly, not today. The man left without smiling. For a few moments Elias stood in the doorway feeling guilty. His chest was tight. His hands were restless. It felt wrong, but he stayed. He climbed the ladder. He repaired the leak. He sealed the cracked frame. He dried the soaked floorboards. When evening came, his room looked better than it had in months. And although no one praised him, no one thanked him, and no one called him generous, Elias felt something unfamiliar, relief. The next day a woman asked him to watch her children while she went shopping. He wanted to say yes. Instead he said, I am sorry. I have work to finish. That night he fixed the broken drawer. The day after, someone wanted help preparing nets before dawn. Elias answered, I cannot this morning. Then he cooked himself a proper breakfast for the first time in weeks. The world did not collapse. The harbor still functioned. The bakery still opened. The festival decorations remained hanging. Children still played in the streets. The town continued breathing without his constant sacrifice. That realization changed something in him. Days passed, then weeks. Elias began waking early not to rescue other people's emergencies, but to care for his own neglected world. He repaired the shelf and placed his books there. He painted the kitchen window blue. He cleaned the corners of the room that had been ignored for too long. He started taking evening walks by the sea again. He sat with his tea while it was still warm. He slept more deeply. His face changed, not dramatically, but softly. The tightness left his eyes. The heaviness in his shoulders eased. And something else happened too. People adjusted. The fisherman who always depended on Elias learned to mend his own net. The bakery owner hired a helper. Neighbors stopped knocking for every small inconvenience. Some were disappointed at first. A few called him less friendly than before. But many began respecting his time in a way they never had when it was freely surrendered. One afternoon, Mara visited again. This time the lamp was lit. The room smelled of tea and fresh paint. The shelf stood strong against the wall. The window was repaired. The ceiling was dry. She looked around and smiled. It feels different here, she said. Elias nodded. It is different. She studied him carefully and asked, Are you happier? He thought for a moment. Then he answered, I am calmer. I think happiness came because calmness finally had a place to live. A month later, another storm moved toward the town. People hurried once again to protect their homes and shops. But this time Elias did not run in every direction. He secured his own roof. He closed his shutters. He brought his tools inside. Then, only after his space was safe, he walked next door and asked an elderly neighbor if she needed help with anything heavy. That was the difference. He still helped. But he no longer abandoned himself in the process. He had not become cold. He had become balanced. When the storm passed, his home remained intact. That evening, as the town slowly reopened doors and checked the damage, Elias walked to the shore and found Celeste weaving another basket. He sat beside her and smiled. She glanced at him and asked, Well, did people hate you when you stopped saying yes to everything? Elias laughed. A few were confused. A few were annoyed. But most of them simply learned to stand on their own feet. Celeste nodded. And what did you learn? Elias watched the tide touch the sand and said, I learned that being available all the time is not the same as being kind. I learned that when I protected my peace, I did not lose myself. I found myself. Celeste's hands moved slowly through the reeds. That is the lesson many people learn too late. So let me ask you something. Are you like Elias? Do people reach for you before they reach for their own strength? Do you say yes because you care or because you are afraid of what will happen if you say no? Do you keep abandoning your own needs and calling it kindness? Remember this. A life can be drained quietly, not by hatred, not by tragedy, but by constant access. You do not have to become hard to protect yourself. You do not have to become selfish to create boundaries. You do not have to disappear from everyone's life. You only need to stop disappearing from your own. Sometimes the most loving word you can say is no, not because you do not care, but because you finally do. Care for your energy, care for your peace, care for the home inside you that no one else can maintain. Because people may admire the person who is always available, but real peace belongs to the person who knows when to close the door, when to rest, and when to choose themselves without shame. And once you learn that your life does not become smaller, it finally becomes yours. Before you leave, take a moment to think about your own life. Is there a place where you have been giving too much? Is there a moment when you should have said no but you were afraid to? Maybe this story is not just about Elias. Maybe it is about all of us. If this story helped you see something about your own life, even in a small way, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it today. Because sometimes, a single story shared at the right moment can help someone protect their peace, set healthier boundaries, and start building a better life. And if more people learn to respect themselves, to care for their time, their energy, and their hearts, the world around us becomes a little kinder, a little calmer, and a little wiser. So if this message resonated with you, share this story with a friend, a family member, or someone who might be silently carrying too much. You never know. Your small action might be the reminder they needed to choose a healthier, happier life. Thank you for listening, and I hope your days ahead are filled not only with kindness for others, but also with kindness for yourself. See you in the next story.